I remember the exact moment my hands started to shake. The beeping of the monitors was too loud. The fluorescent lights were too bright. And this little girl, Lily, was gasping for air right in front of me. Her small hands were clawing at her own throat. Her lips had a bluish tint I never want to see on a child again. I've been a pediatric ER doctor in Houston for 12 years. I thought I'd seen it all. But this was different. Her neighbor, Mrs. Gable, had carried her in. The poor woman was sobbing, her face pale with terror. She couldn't breathe, she kept saying. We moved fast. My team was a well-oiled machine. We got Lily on a gurney, oxygen mask on, starting a nebulizer treatment. The sound of her struggling to pull air into her lungs was the only thing I could hear. It was a harsh, wheezing, desperate sound. I was placing my stethoscope on her back, listening to the tightness in her chest, when the doors to the trauma bay swung open again. He walked in like he was entering a boring business meeting, not a hospital room where his daughter was fighting for her life. Todd Morgan, Lily's father. He was in his 40s, dressed in a polo shirt and khakis. He looked annoyed, not scared, not worried, annoyed. He didn't look at his daughter. He looked right at me, and he said it, the words that made my blood run colder than the AC blowing down my neck. She's faking again. I actually froze. My stethoscope stayed pressed against Lily's small back. I could feel her little ribs straining. Faking? I looked from him to her. Her eyes were wide, pleading, full of real tears. This wasn't fake. This was a child's body screaming for help. She pulls this stunt every time she's in trouble at school, Todd continued, his voice flat. He waved a dismissive hand. Don't baby her. She needs to toughen up. Toughen up? My own dad used to say that to me when I skinned my knee, not when I was actively suffocating. A cold, hard knot tightened in my stomach. This wasn't just denial. This was something else. Something dangerous. My medical instinct, the one I've trusted my whole career, was screaming at me. This is wrong. This is so wrong. I forced myself to stay calm, to be a doctor. Mr. Morgan, your daughter is in respiratory distress. This is a real medical emergency. My voice was steadier than I felt. He just scoffed. It's always a real emergency with her. While my team continued working on Lily, I stepped over to the computer. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I pulled up Lily Morgan's chart. My heart sank into my shoes. 5 ER visits in the last 4 months, all for asthma-like symptoms, all at different hospitals around the Houston area. No primary care physician listed. No follow-up appointments scheduled after any of the discharges. No record of a prescription for a maintenance inhaler. Nothing. It was a pattern of neglect so clear it felt like a punch to the gut. I went back to Lily's side. The nebulizer was helping. Her breathing was starting to ease, the wheeze lessening. I did a more thorough exam, my hands gentle. I lifted the sleeve of her gown slightly. That's when I saw them. Faded yellow and purple bruises on her upper arm. The kind that don't come from falling off a swing. They were small, like fingerprints. And her eyes, when she looked at her dad, they went empty, like a light switching off. Her whole little body went rigid with a tension that had nothing to do with asthma. That was it. The last piece of the puzzle clicked into a horrifying picture. I looked at my head nurse, Maria. Our eyes met. She gave me a single grim nod. She saw it too. I turned to Todd. I need to consult with our social worker, Mr. Morgan. It's hospital policy. He rolled his eyes. For this? Unbelievable. I walked out of that room, my legs feeling like lead. I found Sarah, our on-call social worker, at her desk. I didn't have to say much. The look on my face said it all. We went into a quiet room, and I told her everything. The father's words, the medical history, the bruises, the fear in that child's eyes. I filled out the risk form, my handwriting a messy scrawl. Every detail felt crucial. Then I picked up the phone. I dialed the number for Child Protective Services myself. I didn't delegate it. I needed to do it. I gave them my name, my title. I reported Todd Morgan for suspected medical neglect and emotional abuse. My voice was calm, but my hand holding the phone was slick with sweat. I was ending someone's life as they knew it, but I was also, maybe, just maybe, saving one. When I walked back into Lily's room, she was sitting up more. The color was returning to her face. His dad was on his phone in the corner, looking bored. I went to adjust her IV, and her small, cold hand darted out. She grabbed the sleeve of my white coat. Her grip was surprisingly strong. She pulled me down close so only I could hear. Her breath was still a little ragged, her voice a fragile whisper. "Please," she begged, her eyes locked on mine, filled with a terror no 9-year-old should ever know. "Please, don't let him take me home." In that moment, I wasn't just a doctor treating a sick child. I was a man being handed a profound, terrifying responsibility. I gave her hand a gentle squeeze. I didn't know what was going to happen next. The system is slow and complicated, but I knew one thing for sure. I was not going to let him take her home. I keep wondering how many other kids are out there right now, hiding their pain. I feel so alone carrying this weight. Where are you watching this from? Just type your city in the comments. I need to know I'm not the only one seeing this. I stood there for a second after she whispered those words. Her small fingers were still clutching my coat sleeve. "Please, don't let him take me home." The weight of that request settled deep in my chest. It felt heavier than any medical textbook I'd ever carried. I looked over at Todd. He was still scrolling through his phone, completely unaware of the silent plea happening just feet away from him. I gave Lily's hand what I hoped was a reassuring squeeze. "You're safe here," I whispered back. It was all I could promise in that moment. I didn't know if it was true, but I needed her to hear it. Her grip loosened slightly, but the fear in her eyes didn't fade. I walked over to Todd, my white coat feeling less like a uniform and more like a shield. "Mr. Morgan, Lily's responding well to the treatment. Her oxygen saturation is back in the normal range." I kept my voice professional, neutral. I was giving him a medical update, but I was really watching him, studying his reaction. He didn't look up from his phone. "Great, so we can get out of here soon? I've got things to do." The casual dismissal of his daughter's medical crisis made my jaw tighten. She needs to be admitted for observation. Severe asthma attacks can have a rebound effect. We need to monitor her through the night, at minimum. That got his attention. His head snapped up. "Admitted? For what? She's fine now. You fixed her. She's just looking for more attention." He shoved his phone into his pocket and stood up, his posture aggressive. "I'm not paying for a hospital stay because she's being dramatic." The financial concern hit me like a physical blow. His first thought wasn't for her health, it was for his wallet. "This isn't about drama, Mr. Morgan. This is about standard medical care for a child who nearly went into respiratory failure an hour ago." I held my ground, my feet planted firmly on the linoleum floor. I could feel Maria and the other nurses watching us. The air in the room was thick with tension. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a low, threatening growl. "Listen, Doc, I know my daughter. You're just seeing her for the first time. She's manipulative. She's been doing this since her mother left." He said it like it was a fact, like he was letting me in on a secret. But all I heard was the reason. The mother was gone. It was just him and Lily. The isolation of that situation made my skin crawl. A child with no other parent to turn to. No one to witness what happened at home. "I understand your perspective," I said, though I didn't understand it at all. "But my responsibility is to my patient's well-being, and right now, that means she stays here." I turned my back on him to check Lily's monitor, a deliberate act. I was showing him that my focus was on her, not on his intimidation. I heard him let out a frustrated huff behind me. "Fine, whatever. Do what you gotta do." He sat back down, the plastic chair groaning under his weight. He pulled his phone out again, the blue light illuminating his angry face. I spent the next hour at Lily's bedside, pretending to adjust monitors and check her IV. Really, I was just staying close. I didn't want her to be alone with him. Every time he shifted in his chair, she flinched. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible movement, but I saw it. Her body was a live wire of anxiety. I talked to her in a soft voice. I asked her about school, about what she liked to read. She answered in monosyllables, her eyes constantly darting toward her father. She was a prisoner in that hospital bed, and he was her warden. When her room was finally ready on the pediatric floor, I personally walked with them. I wasn't going to let her be transported by an orderly alone. The walk felt endless. The squeak of the gurney's wheels, the distant sound of a crying baby, the smell of antiseptic. It was all so normal, but this situation was anything but. We got her settled in her new room. It was quieter, with a window looking out over the Houston skyline. The lights of the city twinkled, oblivious to the drama unfolding inside this building. Todd stood by the door, arms crossed, a permanent scowl on his face. "I'll be checking on you throughout the night, Lily," I said, making sure he heard me. It was a promise to her and a warning to him. As I turned to leave, my pager buzzed. Another emergency downstairs. The world didn't stop for one little girl. The constant pull of other patients, other crises, was already tugging me away. But as I walked toward the elevator, I felt a piece of my heart stay behind in that room on the 7th floor. I had started something I couldn't take back. I had made a call that would change everything, and I had no idea if it would be for better or for worse. The not knowing was its own special kind of torture. What would you have done if you were in my shoes, watching that little girl watch her father with pure fear? I feel like I'm carrying this all by myself tonight. Tell me what city you're in right now. Just type it in the comments. It helps to know there are other people out there listening. The elevator doors slid shut, and the silence was deafening. The frantic energy of the ER was gone, replaced by the hum of the elevator motor and the sound of my own breathing. I leaned my head back against the cool metal wall. For a second, I just closed my eyes. I could still see Lily's face, the way her eyes pleaded with me, the way her whole body went still when her dad moved. My pager buzzed again, more insistent this time. A code blue in the ICU. A different child, a different family, a different kind of heartbreak. The world doesn't stop. It just keeps spinning, dragging you along to the next crisis. I pushed through the ER doors, and the noise hit me like a wall. Sirens, a monitor alarm, someone crying. It was all so normal, but I didn't feel normal. I felt split in two. One part of me was here, putting on gloves, rushing toward the code blue. The other part was still up on the 7th floor, standing guard. The code buzzed again, more insistent this time. A code blue in the ICU. A different child, a different family, a different kind of heartbreak. The world doesn't stop. It just keeps spinning, dragging you along to the next crisis. I pushed through the ER doors, and the noise hit me like a wall. Sirens, a monitor alarm, someone crying. It was all so normal. But I didn't feel normal. I felt split in two. One part of me was here, putting on gloves, rushing toward the code blue. The other part was still up on the 7th floor, standing guard. The code was for an infant, a tiny thing with a congenital heart defect. We worked on him for 45 minutes. The parents were in the hallway, holding each other, their faces raw with a hope so fragile it could shatter. We got a rhythm back, a weak, thready pulse, but it was a pulse. It was a win, a small one. But as I washed my hands, the soap stinging a small cut on my knuckle, all I could think about was that weak pulse. How delicate it all is. A child's life, their safety. It's all so fragile. I looked at my reflection in the stainless steel dispenser. I looked tired, older than my 39 years. My shift had hours left, but I was already drained in a way that sleep wouldn't fix. I had to know. I had to see if anything was happening. I walked back to the nurse's station, trying to look like I was just checking charts. Maria was there, typing up her notes. She saw me and gave me a knowing look. "Any word from CPS?" I asked, my voice low. She shook her head, her expression grim. "Not yet. You know how it is. It's a Saturday night. They're swamped. But the report is in the system. I checked." "And the father?" "He's still up there," she said, nodding toward the ceiling. "Came down about 20 minutes ago to get a coffee from the vending machine. Complained about the price. Seemed calm. Calm. The word made my skin crawl. His daughter was in a hospital bed because of a life-threatening condition he called faking, and he was calm. He was annoyed about the cost of a coffee. Every detail just painted a clearer, more horrifying picture of what Lily's home life must be like. A place where being sick was an inconvenience. A place where a cry for help was seen as manipulation. I couldn't focus. Every patient I saw, I was looking for the hidden signs, the flinch, the wary look, the story that didn't quite add up. Lily had opened a door in my mind, and now I was seeing shadows everywhere. Around 2 a.m., my phone vibrated. It was a blocked number. My heart jumped into my throat. I stepped into an empty supply closet, the smell of plastic and antiseptic wipes filling my nose. "Dr. Romero?" a woman's voice asked. It was efficient, no nonsense. "Yes, speaking. This is Investigator Linda Perez with Child Protective Services. I'm calling regarding your report on Lily Morgan." I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by boxes of gauze and saline flushes. This was it. The consequences of that phone call were starting to take shape. "I've reviewed the file and spoken briefly with the hospital social worker," she continued. "I need to ask you a few questions directly. Can you confirm the father, Todd Morgan, stated the child was faking her respiratory distress?" "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "He said it multiple times. She's faking again. She pulls this stunt. He told me not to baby her and that she needed to toughen up." Repeating his words felt dirty, like I was spreading a poison. I heard the soft click of a keyboard on the other end of the line. "And the bruises you noted on her upper arm, can you describe their appearance and location?" I closed my eyes, picturing them. They were on her left upper arm, about midway between her shoulder and elbow. They were faint, yellow and purple. The pattern, it was consistent with fingertip bruising, like someone had grabbed her very hard. The clicking stopped. The line was silent for a moment. "I see," Investigator Perez said. Her tone was still professional, but I heard a slight shift, a hint of something harder. "And the patient expressed a direct fear of returning home with her father?" "She grabbed my coat," I whispered, the memory vivid. "She pulled me close and she begged me. She said, 'Please don't let him take me home.'" Her exact words. Another pause, longer this time. "Thank you, doctor. This is very helpful. I'll be conducting a home visit first thing tomorrow morning. We'll also be interviewing the child here at the hospital without the father present." A home visit? Tomorrow? It was happening faster than I thought. A surge of relief washed over me, so strong it left me dizzy. They were taking it seriously. They were moving. What happens tonight?" I asked. "He's still here, in her room. The hospital admission provides a temporary safety net," she explained. "She is in a protected public environment. We cannot remove a child based on a single report without further investigation. But your report, combined with the medical evidence, has given us sufficient cause to open a formal case. He will not be able to simply check her out against medical advice without triggering an immediate response from us now." It wasn't a guarantee. She wasn't safe yet. But it was a layer of protection that didn't exist before I made that call. It was something. I ended the call and stayed on the floor for a few more minutes, just breathing in the sterile air. I had set a boulder rolling down a hill, and I couldn't stop it now. I thought about Todd Morgan, sitting in that room, completely unaware that his world was about to be turned inside out. I thought about the anger he would feel. And I thought about Lily, sleeping fitfully in that hospital bed, wondering if the morning would bring salvation or just more of the same fear. I had to see her one more time before my shift ended. I needed to look her in the eye and know I had done everything I could. The walk back to the 7th floor felt longer this time. The hallway was dark and quiet, lit only by the dim nightlights. I paused outside her door. It was slightly ajar. I could see the faint glow of the IV pump. I peered inside. Todd was asleep in the reclining chair. His head lolled back, snoring softly. And Lily, she was awake. She was lying on her side, staring out the window at the dark Houston sky. The city lights reflected in her eyes, little points of brightness in the shadows of her room. She saw me. She didn't smile. She didn't move. She just looked at me. And then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. It was a tiny gesture, a silent acknowledgement. She knew I was fighting for her. In that quiet, dark room, it felt like the most important moment of my entire career. I nodded back. Then I turned and walked away, the weight of her silent trust settling on my shoulders. It was heavier than any burden I'd ever carried. What would you have done, knowing that a single nod from a scared child was all the thanks you might ever get? This job, it takes everything from you sometimes. Tell me you understand. Just tell me what city you're watching this from. It makes this feel a little lonely. The rest of my shift was a blur of motions and routines. I treated a broken arm from a skateboard fall, I diagnosed a case of strep throat, I wrote prescriptions and gave instructions. But my mind was a million miles away, locked on the 7th floor. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lily's nod, that small, solemn dip of her chin. It was a thank you, it was a plea, it was a promise all at once. Around 5 a.m., the chaos finally began to settle. The sun wasn't up yet, but the deep black of the night was softening to a dull gray outside the ER windows. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making everything look pale and washed out. My body ached with a fatigue that went straight to the bone. I was finishing my notes on the last patient when my phone buzzed again. It was Maria. "David," she said, her voice hushed. "He's getting agitated. He's at the nurse's station demanding to speak to the doctor in charge. He wants to know why Lily can't be discharged at 7 a.m. sharp." My stomach tightened into a hard knot. I had hoped for more time. I had hoped the CPS investigator would be here first. "I'm on my way up," I said, my voice rough. I took the stairs, needing the physical exertion. Each step echoed in the concrete stairwell. My legs felt heavy. I pushed through the door to the 7th floor, and the quiet calm of the pediatric unit enveloped me. It was a different world from the ER. Softer sounds, muted colors. I saw Todd immediately. He was leaning over the nurse's station, his knuckles white on the countertop. "I have a right to know the plan for my daughter," he was saying, his voice a low, controlled rumble. The nurse behind the desk, a young woman named Chloe, looked nervous. "Mr. Morgan," I said, walking up. I kept my posture relaxed, my hands in my coat pockets. I didn't want to give him any reason to escalate. "Is there a problem?" He turned on me, his eyes blazing. "The problem is we've been here all night. She's fine. She's sleeping. I want to take my daughter home." "Lily had a very serious medical event," I said, keeping my tone even, like I was explaining it for the first time. "We need to ensure she's stable. We need to arrange for follow-up care, an asthma action plan. These things take time." "I don't care about an action plan," he spat. "I can take care of my own kid. You people just want to run up a bill." He took a step closer to me. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "I'm her father. I decide what's best for her." In that moment, I saw it clearly. It wasn't just denial, it was control. Absolute, total control. He couldn't stand that we had taken that away from him, even for a night. He couldn't stand that his word wasn't the final law inside these walls. "The decision for discharge is a medical one, Mr. Morgan," I said, holding his gaze, "and right now, the medical decision is that she stays." I saw the fury flash in his eyes. It was a pure, hot rage. I thought he might swing at me. My muscles tensed, ready. But then, he did something worse. He smiled. It was a cold, ugly twist of his lips. "Fine," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for me. "You think you're so smart. You think you know my kid? You have no idea. You're just another sucker she's playing." He leaned in even closer. "When I get her home, we're going to have a long talk about this, about the trouble she causes." The threat was so clear, so vile. It wasn't a threat against me. It was a promise of punishment for her. My blood ran cold. I felt a tremor start in my hands, and I clenched them into fists inside my pockets. I wanted to grab him. I wanted to throw him against the wall and scream at him. But I couldn't. I was a doctor. I had rules. I had a license to protect. Just then, the elevator doors at the end of the hall slid open with a soft ding. A woman stepped out. She was dressed in plain clothes, dark slacks and a blazer, and carried a leather folio. She had a calm, authoritative presence that immediately changed the energy in the hallway. It was Investigator Perez. She walked straight toward us, her eyes scanning, taking in the scene. She looked at Todd, then at me, and gave a slight, professional nod. "Mr. Morgan," she said, her voice clear and firm. "My name is Linda Perez. I'm with Child Protective Services. I'd like to speak with you if you have a moment." Todd's face went slack with shock. The anger drained away, replaced by a confused, wary panic. He looked from her to me, and the realization dawned in his eyes. I saw the exact moment he understood. I had called them. His smile was gone. All that was left was a pale, stunned fear. "What is this?" he stammered. "What's going on?" "I'd like to speak with you in private," Investigator Perez repeated, her tone leaving no room for argument. She gestured toward a small family consultation room down the hall. He looked at me one last time. The hatred in his eyes was a physical force. It was the look of a man whose entire world had just been cracked open. Without another word, he turned and followed her, his shoulders slumped. I stood there, my heart hammering against my ribs. The confrontation was over for now, but a new, more complicated battle had just begun. I had protected Lily for the night, but the fight for her future was just starting, and I had no idea how it would end. Have you ever had to make a call that you knew would blow up someone's life, even if it was the right thing to do? The guilt and the relief are all mixed up inside me. I need to know someone out there gets it. Just tell me the name of your city. It makes this heavy feeling a little easier to carry. I watched Todd Morgan follow Investigator Perez into that small, quiet room. The door clicked shut behind them. The sound was so final. I just stood there in the hallway, my legs feeling like they were made of concrete. The air was still. I could hear the hum of a medical pump from a nearby room and the faint sound of a morning news show on a TV. My own breathing sounded too loud. Chloe, the nurse, looked at me with wide eyes. What happens now? I shook my head. I didn't know. I truly didn't. I had started this process, but I was just a doctor. I wasn't a judge. I wasn't a social worker. All I could do now was wait and hope the system worked. Hope that the evidence, the bruises, the medical history, his own cold words, would be enough. I felt completely powerless, and that was a terrifying feeling after being the one in charge all night. I made myself walk toward Lily's room. I had to check on her. I pushed the door open slowly. She was sitting up in bed now, the sheets pulled up to her chin. Her eyes were huge, fixed on the door. She had heard everything. She had seen her dad leave with that woman. "Hey, Lily," I said, my voice soft. I walked over to her bedside. "How are you feeling?" She didn't answer about her breathing. She just looked at me and asked, "Is my dad in trouble?" The question was so small, so loaded. How do you answer that? I pulled up the visitor's chair and sat down so I wasn't towering over her. "That lady is here to make sure everyone is safe and okay," I said carefully. "She's going to talk to your dad, and she's going to talk to you too. She just wants to understand what's happening." Lily looked down at her hands, picking at a loose thread on the blanket. "He's gonna be really mad," she mumbled, almost to herself. My heart broke all over again. Her first concern wasn't for her own safety. It was for his anger. That's what her life had taught her. Her world revolved around managing his emotions. I wanted to promise her he would never be mad at her again, but I couldn't lie to her. "You know," I said, "the most important job for grown-ups is to keep kids safe. That's my job. That's that lady's job. And that's your dad's job too. Sometimes, when grown-ups are having a hard time, other grown-ups need to step in and help. That's all that's happening right now. We're all just trying to help." She didn't look convinced. She just kept picking at that thread. I sat with her in silence for a few minutes. There was nothing else to say. Words couldn't fix the fear that was etched into her. A little while later, the door opened and Investigator Perez stepped in. She gave me a brief look that said the conversation with Todd was over for now. She had a kind but neutral smile for Lily. "Hi, Lily. My name is Linda. Would it be okay if I chatted with you for a little bit? Just you and me?" Lily looked at me, a flicker of panic in her eyes. I gave her what I hoped was a reassuring nod. "It's okay," I said. "I'll be right outside if you need me." I stood up and left the room, feeling like I was abandoning her all over again. I stood in the hallway, just on the other side of the door. I couldn't hear the words, but I could hear the low, steady murmur of Investigator Perez's voice. I prayed that Lily felt safe enough to tell the truth, the whole, awful truth. About 20 minutes later, Perez came out. Her expression was unreadable, a professional mask. "She's a very bright girl," she said to me quietly. "I've arranged for a forensic medical exam to document the bruises, and I've spoken with her school counselor. We're building a picture." "And the father?" I asked. Her lips tightened almost imperceptibly. "He has been informed that Lily will be remaining in the hospital under a protective hold pending our investigation. He was volatile. He has left the premises for now. He knows not to attempt to remove her." He was gone. The immediate threat was gone. The air in the hallway suddenly felt easier to breathe. The tightness in my chest loosened, just a little. I leaned back against the wall, the relief so profound it was almost a physical pain. I had done it. I had gotten her through the night. I had created a space where she could breathe, both literally and figuratively. My shift was finally over. The sun was properly up now, casting long, warm beams of light through the hallway windows. As I walked out of the hospital, the morning air felt different. It felt clean. I got into my car and just sat there for a long time, the engine off, staring at the steering wheel. I replayed every moment. The gasping, the father's cold dismissal, the feel of Lily's small hand on my coat, the nod in the dark, the look of pure hatred from Todd Morgan. I had chosen a path, and there was no going back. A family was being torn apart, but maybe it was a family that needed to be torn apart to save one of its members. The moral weight of that decision settled on me. It's a weight I still carry. I started the car and drove home, the events of the night playing on a loop behind my eyes. I didn't know what the future held for Lily Morgan, but I knew that because of a phone call I made, her future, for the first time, had a chance. This is the part where I have to ask you, the person watching this, for something. This story is heavy. It lives with me. If you've ever had to make an impossible choice, if you understand this mix of guilt and resolve, please let me know I'm not alone. Take a second, hit that like button, leave a comment about what you would have done, and subscribe. Your support means I can keep telling these stories, and maybe, just maybe, it helps someone else find a call. The next few days were a blur of paperwork and phone calls. I went back to my normal life, my normal shifts, but I wasn't the same. I kept my phone close, jumping every time it buzzed. I was waiting for an update from CPS. I was waiting to hear about Lily. A week later, I got the call. It was Investigator Perez. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the relief in it. "We found a placement for her," she said. "A maternal aunt in Dallas. She didn't even know the full extent of what was happening. She's horrified, and she's eager to take Lily in. I closed my eyes, leaning my head against the wall in my kitchen. And the father? A temporary restraining order is in place, she said. Supervised visitation only, pending a full psychological evaluation and parenting classes. It's a long road, Dr. Romero, but she's safe. Safe. The word echoed in the quiet of my kitchen. It was the only thing that mattered. I hung up the phone and finally let myself cry. It wasn't a loud cry. It was just a slow release of all the tension, the fear, the anger I had been carrying since that little girl gasped for air in front of me. They were tears of relief. They were tears of grief for the childhood she had lost. They were tears of hope for the one she might have now. A month later, a small envelope arrived at the hospital for me. It had no return address. Inside was a piece of notebook paper. The drawing was simple, made with crayon. It was a stick figure in a white coat standing under a bright yellow sun. Next to it was a smaller stick figure holding its hand. At the top, in wobbly, careful letters, it said, "Thank you for helping me breathe." I keep that drawing in the top drawer of my desk. On the hard days, I take it out and look at it. It reminds me why I do this job. It's not about the diagnoses or the drama. It's about the kids. It's about being the person who looks a little closer, who listens a little harder, who isn't afraid to make the difficult call. I never saw Todd Morgan again. I heard through the hospital grapevine that he moved out of state. I don't know if he ever got the help he needed. I hope, for his sake, that he did. And Lily? I don't know all the details of her life now, but her aunt sent a Christmas card to the hospital the following year. There was a photo inside. Lily was standing in front of a Christmas tree, wearing a red dress. She was smiling. A real, genuine, unafraid smile. Her eyes were bright. She looked like a different kid. She looked like a kid. That's the end of the story. At least, it's the end of my part in it. I set a boulder rolling down a hill that night, and it changed the landscape of a little girl's life forever. I broke a family apart, but I think I helped put a person back together. The guilt and the relief still live inside me. They probably always will. But when I look at that crayon drawing, I know I would make the same call 1,000 times over. This job takes everything from you sometimes, but sometimes it gives you something back too. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been in a situation where you had to be someone's voice, please let me know. Hit that like button if you believe in doing the right thing, even when it's hard. Leave a comment and tell me what you think happens next for Lily. And subscribe. Your support means this channel can keep going, and maybe these stories can give someone else the courage to speak up. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. It makes carrying this weight feel a little less lonely.